Welcome to Larry the Money Guy, the show where we help federal employees, business owners, and athletes make tax-smart financial decisions, build wealth, and retire with confidence. And now, here is your host, Larry Gatz.
Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to today's episode of Larry the Money Guy. This one is directed at federal employees or former federal employees, but more likely our current ones. So federal employees every year pour millions of dollars into their TSP plans. And today I wanted to give a little bit of clarification. We've had a lot of people with a lot of questions, it seems, in meetings. And I want to talk about contributions, distributions, how money comes in and how money goes out. To start, right, the TSP came around for FERS employees. Now they get a government match. So money goes in, and TSP is known as what they call a defined contribution plan. So your pension is a defined benefit plan, which says when you retire, you will get X amount of dollars, and there's a formula based on your years of service and your average high salary and the age at which you retire. You know what you're going to receive. The TSP is different. This is a defined contribution where they say, hey, you can choose to put in however much money you want into TSP. The government is going to give you a match, but how you invest that and where it's going to be and how much money you're going to have when you go to retire someday, that part's up to you. So that's the purpose of a TSP. The Thrift Savings Plan is this defined contribution plan. And so we have guidelines from the IRS that says you can contribute money to it and the government is going to match. So this year, you can contribute, for regular people, you can contribute up to $23,000 or more if you're over 50 years old. I'll talk about that in a minute, into your thrift savings plan every year. The government is then going to give you a match. So I've got a handy table here that will pull it up. You guys can either pause it or take a look at the screen. But the government is always going to put in 1% automatically. And then they're going to match 100% of your 3% contribution. So if you put in 3, they will match 100% of 3, and then they will match 50% of your next 2%. All of that is a long way of saying that if you need to be contributing at least 5% of your pay to the thrift savings plan to get the full match. So if we can we pull that chart up on here? There it is. So take a look. If you're putting in nothing, the government is going to put in 1. If you put in 1, they match 1 plus their 1% for a total of 3. If you're putting in 2, you can see how it works. But the maximum amount that the government is going to put in is 5%. So the 1% automatic plus up to 4% matching. So take a screenshot of this table. If you're just getting set up with TSP, make sure that you've got this. All right, let's talk about moving on from what the match is. We want to make sure, number one, for federal employees, they don't have catch-up or year-end provisions on this. So we want to make sure, based on how old you are, that you go into your payroll system. We can take this table down. And we want to make sure that we go into our payroll system and we take a look at how much biweekly are we setting up into our paychecks. So if you are under 50 years old, the maximum amount of money that you can put in this year, it's 2025, is $23,500. Federal employees, you need to make sure that we break this out as a per paycheck, $903.85. The reason why we want to break this out into a per paycheck is that if you go ahead and if you're a high income earner and say you set your TSP contributions to 20% and maybe you max out to that $23,500 per year in October. Well, the rest of your pay periods for the rest of the year are not going to get a government match on those contributions. So you want to make sure that you're doing a per paycheck contribution set up so that way you've got money going into at least the 5%. You've got money going into your TSP every single paycheck throughout the year. That way you don't lose out on the government match. All right, catch-up contributions. This is a great table. So if you're over the age of 50, if you're 50 to 59 years old, now we have what they call catch-up contributions, where this becomes now you can put in up to $31,000 or $1,192.31 per pay period if you're between 50 and 59. Between 60 and 63, we have this cool thing. Now they call it the super catch-up provisions that say now you can put extra money in there up to $34,750 a year. And that's $1,336.54 per paycheck. So these are good numbers to have. And then it's important to note that this is the maximum amount of money that you can contribute into your TSP. But if you have a spouse and they don't work, of course, if they do work, they have their own 401k, their own retirement plans. But if they don't work, the spouses can continue to contribute in what they call a spousal IRA. So they could open up a separate IRA account in their name because of your working history. So this is a good table to have. It's a good table to capture, take a look at. But when you put money into the TSP, if we can jump off of this chart here, and we'll just go back to our regular me talking today. So when you put money in, you get to choose how you invest your money. It can either go traditional or it can go Roth. The government match, as far as any rule, barring any rule changes as of today, the government match is always going to go traditional. Whether you choose to put your contribution in on the traditional or on the Roth side, the government is still going to fully match you. It's just going to go traditional. You do not need to put 5% in traditional and the rest in Roth to get the government match. Whatever you're putting into the Roth will get matched. So that's a big thing that I see a lot of people doing. You don't need to contribute to traditional. Now, what's the difference, right? Traditional TSP contributions save you money on your taxes today, right? If you make $100,000 a year and you put $10,000 into your TSP, your taxable income will be $90,000 because we got a deduction for the money that goes in. What we get a deduction going in, we're going to pay income taxes on later. So in the future, after you go to retire, any contributions that you've put into the traditional side plus growth can be a really big piece of this, value of compound interest. Later on, all of that money that you pull out of there is 100% taxable as income at whatever your tax rate is at the time. So now we need to pay attention to when we go to pull traditional money out of the TSP, what tax rate are we in? And what are our potential Medicare premiums if we're going onto a Medicare plan? How much is our Social Security going to be taxed? What is our effective tax rate in retirement? Roth contributions, you put taxes in you put money in on an after-tax basis into your TSP. You don't get a deduction. So if you make $100,000 and you put $10,000 into a Roth contribution, you're still paying income taxes on all $100,000 this year. But the money goes into the plan and it grows tax-free forever. When we go to pull it out, it's tax-free. So however much it grows, we don't care what our future tax rate is because it comes out tax-free. Everybody asks this, right? Well, which one should I do, Roth versus traditional? And I hate to be the guy who says it depends, but it depends. You need to have a plan to take a look. Maybe you're a physician or an attorney or a senior director in the federal government, and your income taxes today, you're in a pretty high tax situation today. And when you retire, depending on what your pension is going to be, how much you've saved, how much your Social Security is, your spouse's income, any of their retirement assets, we need to build out a projection that says, well, what is our tax bracket going to be in retirement? And then we can start to build a plan that says, do we contribute on a pre-tax or an after-tax basis to the TSP today? Generally, I would say if you're young and you're working and you're kind of early in your career and you're in what you know is to be a pretty low tax bracket, I would say go tax-free, right? Pay your taxes on the seed and not the harvest in 30 years. So there's a lot of considerations that go into this, but if you do some planning, you need to be aware of what you're paying in taxes and where your future tax rate is going to be. There's a couple factors that go into that, but a big planning step, I think, for most federal employees, take responsibility and really take a look, know your numbers and how this is going to impact you. A big change that came earlier this year, it came out April 9th, there was a ruling, and this is effective for 2026. So it's not effective this year, but in 2026, there's going to be some big changes coming to the TSP. If your wages are over $145,000 for the year, you can do, and you're doing the TSP catch-up contributions. Those catch-up contributions will go into the Roth automatically. This is not a choice. So on the first $31,000 that you want, or the first $23,500, sorry, that you want to put in the plan, the first $23,500 can go in on the Roth. But if you do the catch-up contributions to get to $31,000, that number is going to, those catch-up contributions are going to be forced into the Roth. Kind of a weird rule change. Typically, higher income earners want to be able to defer more money, and we've kind of eliminated that option out of the 401ks and out of TSP plans starting next year. The other big thing that we've gotten is that in-plan Roth conversions are going to be available within TSP. We've been hoping that this would come for years. You haven't had the ability within TSP. So if you were under 59 and a half, still employed, there was no way for you to get your money from a traditional TSP to the Roth TSP, or to get your money from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA in the TSP, because we couldn't make an in-service withdrawal before 59 and a half. Now they're going to allow it. And I would say that this is a double-edged sword. Federal employees, you guys have the ability now to do in-plan Roth conversions starting in 2026. The issue that you're going to run into is everybody wants to be able to do Roth conversions, but you have to be careful, because every dollar that you convert from traditional to Roth is going to be taxable income in the year that you do it. And you cannot withhold the taxes or make the tax payment out of your TSP account. So this is kind of one of those things where, like, hey, this is great, right? My parents gave me the keys to the car, and I can go in and I can go into my plan and I can do Roth conversions. However, be very, very, very careful, because every dollar that you convert to Roth inside of the TSP, you're going to have to pay taxes on it from some sort of outside account. So I think it's great. It's wonderful. If you're working with a financial planner and you have a plan of how much money you want to move because of your income or your spouse's income, whatever your financial situation is, we have the ability now to do it within the TSP. And that's awesome. So nothing against it, but I would say, I know that we're going to have some people who go in and just do a Roth conversion for like a couple $100,000, and maybe they get at the end of the year a $40,000 tax bill, and they go, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? So we can do it. Be very, very, very careful. So that's how money goes in. So in the TSP, we covered the government match. We covered how much you can put in per pay period, depending on your age. We covered the changes that are coming with catch-up contributions moving to Roth. We covered in-plan Roth conversions. Now I want to talk about TSP distributions. So I would say this is where things get kind of frustrating. TSP withdrawals are allowed anytime that you separate from service after you turn 59 and a half. Or if you're special provision, there's some different rules to you, but you can pull money out of the TSP. If you decide to roll your money from the TSP plan to an IRA at Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, wherever you want to go, if you roll money from the traditional TSP to an outside IRA account, that is not a taxable event. You can't do it until you separate from service or you turn 59 and a half. But once you are, you can move it out, and then you have a whole world of investment options, and you can be a little bit more tactical with things. Not a taxable event to pull money and do a direct transfer to an IRA or a Roth IRA account. Where things get frustrated is if you want to take money out of your TSP. Say you're retiring and you want to leave your money in TSP and say, I'll just pull money from the TSP. It comes out as what they call a pro rata withdrawal, which means that it will proportionately take from your investment mix your distribution. So if you're 50% in the C fund and 50% in the G fund, and you go in and you request a distribution, it will pull 50-50 from each of them. The problem with that is that we don't get to set up buckets to say, hey, if the markets are down, if the C fund is down, I actually want to make this distribution. I want to pull money out and I want to pull it from the G fund because it's safe. And I want to pull everything from there. Can't do that within TSP. It's going to come out proportionately, even if you'd rather leave one of the funds alone to recover or keep growing or something else. So it kind of makes it hard to do what we call a bucketing strategy. The other piece is if you're over 70 and a half, the year that you turn 70 and a half, one of the tax planning strategies that we use is called a qualified charitable distribution. So we can gift money directly from our IRA plans or 401k plans. You can gift it directly to a charity and it never shows up in your tax bracket. So it's a good way to do charitable giving while reducing your taxable income. The TSP does not allow qualified charitable distributions from within their platform. So if you want to do something like a QCD, you want to take your TSP, roll the balance to a regular IRA account at an outside custodian, and then you can initiate the qualified charitable distribution. One thing to note, we only do QCDs out of traditional balances because that's taxable. You wouldn't want to do it out of your Roth balance because you don't owe taxes on that anyway. So there's some frustrating parts about taking money out of TSP. We don't get to do custom drawdown strategies and say, hey, we're going to put, 20% of your money in the G fund and we'll leave the rest in the C, S, and the I funds and let it keep growing. And we can do drawdown or we can time the markets or we can kind of build out different buckets. We don't have the ability to do that. And it's kind of a tactical thing for us planners. But the other part that I think is just crazy and really frustrating, if you have a Roth and a traditional TSP balance, which now, if you're a high income earner and you're doing catch-up contributions, I think a lot more people are going to start to have both Roth and traditional balances. When you request a distribution, not a transfer, when you request a distribution sent to your checking account and you have a Roth and traditional balance, it comes out also pro rata. So if 70% of your account is traditional and 30% is Roth, and you go into TSP to make a distribution, it's going to pull 70% from traditional and 30% from Roth. And that, from a planning standpoint, is really, really frustrating. Because think of it this way. If we have a gal who has a $500,000 thrift savings plan balance, $350,000, 70% is traditional, and $150,000 is in the Roth. If we want to do some planning and say, hey, maybe their spouse is still working, but we need to take money out of this and take a distribution. So she needs to take $40,000 out of that $500,000 balance. And we want to pull it from the Roth to keep our taxable bracket low for the year. There's no way to do it inside of TSP. So that $40,000 draw comes out as $28,000 comes from the traditional, $12,000 comes from the Roth. And so we bumped up her income, taxable income, by $28,000, even if we had the money in the Roth to pull. If we move to an IRA at Schwab or Vanguard or Fidelity, you pick whoever your big custodian is, we move money from TSP. The traditional TSP balance goes to a Roth IRA. The Roth TSP balance goes to a Roth IRA. And when somebody needs money, in this case, if this lady would have wanted to pull $40,000 out, she would get to pick which of the two accounts that she could pull it from. Maybe we want to pull it all from the traditional to let the Roth tax-free balance keep growing. Maybe we want to pull it from the Roth because of some tax planning scenarios. We can do that. Inside a TSP, it doesn't give us the option. So there's a lot of things coming. I think a lot of things to understand. I think a lot of federal employees don't truly understand what the balance is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this today. I wanted to get on, give a good high level overview, and then break it down into some details. So the big takeaways from today: number one, next year, starting in 2026, if you make over $145,000 and you're over 50 and doing catch-up contributions to max out your funding, those are going to be forced into the Roth. Also, starting next year in 2026, you will be allowed to do in-plan Roth conversions. Just be careful, because you're going to have to pay the taxes from somewhere else if you're going to do it. So those are your two big changes coming on TSP. And then we just covered contributions and distributions and the things that we need to be aware of in a defined contribution plan. Because there's nothing in the TSP that says if we invest a certain amount of money and we contribute, we'll have this much money, which translates to this much monthly income. It's subject to the markets. It's subject to how you invest it. It's subject to the amount of money that you're putting in. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. But TSP is a great tool. It's the largest retirement account probably in the world. I know in the country, it's the largest retirement account that we have. So congratulations. If you're watching this, wanted to learn more, hopefully this was helpful. Drop me a link or drop me a note in the comments if this was helpful. If you still have questions, as always, if you want to talk to somebody about your current tax rates, whether you should be doing Roth or traditional contributions, shoot us a direct message. Go to copperwoodfinancial.com. We will have the links up that you can get to talk to somebody, make sure that you understand where your taxes are at. So with that, I want to thank you guys so much for jumping on today. As always, we'll catch you next time.